um, modeling. When physicists are making up theories, there's a like a methodology that they have for making the model, and this is true of all scientific fields. Even the computer model thing that I said earlier, that's the same word, model. And I think it would help people if they learned some of that, some of how to build theories. One highlight I'd like to make is Isaac Newton described. There's people that call themselves systems thinkers. I think Newton was the first systems thinker. At least what he wrote was the first. I don't know what was said before that. I found out he actually sort of didn't give credit to certain people he learned shit from. So who knows where this one came from. But if it's him, it's fucking amazing. I think this is more important than anything else he did, by the way. He's seeing things as systems with parts in them, and there's a bunch of logic that he figured out of how to understand systems. And he put them on, if you can imagine a scale with an x-axis, and if you think of one metric, the number of interdependencies between the parts, the number of causal relationships between the parts. As the number goes up, let's start from the other end. No connections, no cause and effect between the parts, no dependencies between the parts. If you imagine that system, well, first of all, he said that doesn't exist in reality. There's no system in real life that has parts that don't depend on each other. And now I want to say a sentence everyone's heard a million times. The whole is more than the sum of its parts, right? That's not this system, though. This system, the whole is equal to the sum of the parts, because there's no way to, well, how do I say it? In a system where there are dependencies, there's a way to have a multiplying effect. So the whole will be more than the sum of its parts because there's a multiplying effect happening when they work together. Now, on the extreme end of this scale, the other end, you have so many interdependencies, it reaches a limit. It reaches an end point where there's one lever, one thing that you can pull that will control the entire system. And where I learned this, the first time that I learned it in a not general form, not like this, was in chemistry class. And they're teaching us about how some chemistry works, a chemical reaction, a particular one. It has, let's say, two reactants, and it has two products. And let's say you need one of part A and two of part B to make the products that you want. And let's say you happen to have 1 million of part A and not quite 2 million of part B. Now, if you're going to run this through a chemical reaction and use up all the parts you have, you will have some left over. If anyone's following the math, you will have some left over of part A. I think I said that right. Did you follow what I said?
One of them, the one that has a fewer is
Yes.
going. Yeah,
and that's the limiting factor. That's going to control how much product you get. The other one doesn't have any control. That's a very simple scenario, but this logic applies to big scenarios, even with people, even with politics, even with economics. And let's see, it maybe I shouldn't have put it here. To me, it's it applies everywhere, but just looking at it here, it's not so clear how it applies anywhere. I don't know if I helped anyone make sense of this or why it's important. Did it make sense to you? Why, or does this feel like I put it in out of love of it instead of logic?
possibly. But I mean, it's not out of place completely, but it's maybe that's why it ended up being number 8 and not number 1.
Another one that I love that I wouldn't put in something like this as a top 8 or top 10, the concept of degrees of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
I see that in so many places. I remember one time I was playing a game. It was these balls attached with string in the middle, so 2 balls with string in the middle, and you were to throw it and hope that this contraption ball with string latches on to this device, and you're doing it from far, and there's a level 1, level 2, level 3 different point levels, and I used the degrees of freedom concept in that game, and I was beating everybody because I thought the way I'm holding the ball, well, I don't want to teach it now because I didn't explain it, but this is really only to physicists, I'm sorry. The ideas I put here, I chose them because I found them to be more universal than everything else. They apply everywhere more than everything else does, in my view. Maybe you'll catch some stuff. Maybe in your slides you have, some stuff.
I mean, like we said at the beginning, because of the fact that the theory of knowledge is scattered in all sorts of different disciplines, you don't actually have a well unified way of I'm going to the university to get a degree in the theory of knowledge. It's not something that you do because you don't have that kind of disciplinary way of thinking about it, because it involves all sorts of things. It has it might be falling under the umbrella of cognitive science, which is actually a kind of a broad umbrella.
I'd like to clarify for people what I think you're saying. If you were in a philosophy department, and by the way, I was never in a philosophy university department. I was in the physics department. I didn't even take a philosophy class. The philosophy I learned was after I left Islam, from reading books by people like David Deutsch, Karl Popper, Socrates, these people, even Einstein. Although I read Einstein's book, in my 20s or earlier than that, because of college. What was I saying? I forgot what I was saying. Do you remember?
I'm not entirely sure. No.